The sky changed without warning, and people looked up with wide eyes as strange lights moved across the clouds in slow silence. It started like a dream, but quickly turned into something much darker. The lights were not stars or planes. They were ships. Big black ships that blocked the sun and filled the air with a deep sound that shook the ground. Children cried as shadows covered the streets. Dogs barked and birds vanished into the sky. Something terrible had come, and no one was ready for it. Governments sent planes, but they fell like leaves. Tanks rolled into cities, but they melted like plastic under the fire from above. No one could stop it. The aliens had arrived, and they were not here to talk. They did not send a message. They did not ask questions. They simply attacked. The world was on fire within hours. Buildings fell like sand. The ground cracked under the weight of the machines. Great towers in New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris burned with green flames. Electricity stopped. Phones went dead. Nothing worked. It was like the world had gone blind and silent and broken all at once. People ran. People screamed. Some prayed, but most just tried to hide. Mothers held their children close, and fathers looked up with fists they knew would do nothing. The soldiers fought, but their bullets bounced off the enemy like dust. The aliens were not like anything Earth had ever seen. They had no eyes, no faces, just tall silver armor and weapons that glowed with purple light. They were the Zerai, and they came from a place no human had ever heard of. The Zerai moved like machines. Fast, cold, perfect. They did not speak. They scanned everything. They took over cities without saying a single word. They found leaders and broke their minds. They found soldiers and turned them into ash. They placed strange towers in the middle of every major place, and the towers started to hum. Then they began to scan, not of buildings, but of people. The Zerai were looking for something, not gold or oil or data. They were looking for someone. In a small, dusty town far from the cities, a man stood alone on a hill. His name was Ray. He watched the sky as the ships passed overhead. He did not run. He did not hide. He simply stood there like a mountain. The ground shook, but he did not move. Ray was not famous. He was not rich or powerful. He was just a man who had left the world behind years ago. He lived alone. No family. No friends. Just quiet days in the desert with books and old memories. But today something in him changed. As the wind howled and the world burned, Ray took a deep breath and started walking. He walked toward the city that was no longer a city, toward the lights and the smoke and the screams, toward the enemy. A small scout drone flew over the hill and stopped. It scanned Ray with red beams. It checked his heart rate, his brain waves, his DNA. It found something it did not understand. The drone hesitated. Ray looked up at it and smiled. The drone turned and flew away fast. It sent a message to the command ship in orbit. The message said one word: unknown. Inside the alien flagship, the generals of the Zerai met in a black chamber. They watched the message and frowned in their own way. They did not fear humans. Humans were weak, slow, broken. But this one was different. He had no fear. He had no signal. He could not be scanned. The generals did not like unknowns. They ordered a special unit to be formed. Find this man, they said. Find him and erase him. But Ray was already gone. He had disappeared into the smoke of the city. He moved like a shadow. He found broken machines and studied them. He found injured people and helped them. He did not ask for thanks. Whispers began to spread in the ruins. Some said they saw a man walk through fire and not burn. Some said he touched a machine and it exploded. Some said the aliens avoided him like he was poison. A child in the ruins told his mother, "The ghost sent him to protect us." The aliens kept scanning, but they never found him. Every time they came close, he was already somewhere else. He was faster than their drones, smarter than their codes, stronger than any human should be. In the command ship, the generals grew restless. They did not believe in magic. They believed in control, and they were losing it. "This is just a glitch," said one general. "No," said another, "this is something else." Then a signal came from Earth, not from a machine, from a Zerai scout unit. They had found a symbol burned into the wall of a fallen building. It was a handprint, human-sized, burned into steel. Next to it, one word carved deep: leave. And so the generals gave one order: find the human anomaly. Eliminate him at all cost. But Ray was not hiding. He was waiting. Smoke covered the sky like a dark blanket, and the ruins of the city stretched in every direction with broken cars, twisted metal, and empty homes filled with silence. Fires burned in the distance, but no one came to stop them. There was no fire department anymore, no government, no safety. Only fear and shadows and the whisper of alien machines floating through the air. Ray walked through it all without fear. His eyes moved slowly, scanning each street, each alley, each collapsed tower. He saw no one alive, but he knew someone was watching. The Zerai were always watching. He stepped over a fallen drone, its metal frame, still warm, its eye light flickering weakly. He touched the side of the wreck and closed his eyes. A strange hum pulsed through the air. The machine sparked once, then went completely dead. Ray stood up and kept walking. Far above the earth, inside a dark chamber, glowing with lines of purple light, the Zerai High Command reviewed the feeds. One screen showed Ray walking through the city. No weapon, no armor, no fear. The generals stared with cold silence as they studied the movements of this human who did not act like other humans. He was not scared. He was not confused. He was not easy to break. They had scanned his mind from orbit, but found only silence. They had tracked his DNA, but found no match. They had fired at him and missed. One soldier said he saw Ray move before the trigger was even pulled. It was impossible. Humans could not do that. The generals summoned a young Zerai tactician named Tana. She was different from the others. She asked questions. She studied humans. She had once said humans were more dangerous when cornered. Now she was told to track the human anomaly and find a weakness. Tana agreed and began to watch the human with full attention. She followed the drone feeds and city scans and watched recordings of Ray from the first invasion days. She noticed something strange. He never stayed in one place, yet he never truly ran. He was always moving towards something, not away from it. Back on Earth, Ray entered a building that used to be a hospital. Its walls were cracked and its halls filled with smoke and silence. Inside, he found a group of survivors hiding under beds and behind doors. They looked up at him with wide eyes, ready to scream or run. He raised one hand slowly and spoke. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was calm, like water on fire. The people did not move at first. Then a child stepped forward. "Are you the man who walks through fire?" Ray smiled softly and nodded. He told them to wait one more night, then move west where others were gathering. He promised they would be safe. And then he left as quickly as he came. Outside in the city ruins, a trap waited for him. The Zerai had set it perfectly. An entire square filled with empty cars and dead drones. Ray stepped into the center, and the world around him changed. Suddenly, he was no longer in the city. He was standing in a green field under a blue sky. Birds sang and soft wind touched his face. It was a simulation, an artificial world built to trap his mind. Most humans would fall into it and never return. But Ray stood still. He looked around. He saw the grass was too perfect. The sun was too still. The wind made no sound through the trees. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, everything cracked like glass and fell away. He was back in the city square. Drones floated around him, frozen, confused. He had broken their mental trap in seconds. Tana watched from a ship nearby. Her eyes widened as she saw the feed break apart. She whispered one word: "Impossible." Ray walked forward and placed his hand on one of the drone shells. It exploded without warning, sending pieces across the street. The rest of the drones tried to attack. They moved fast. He moved faster. With a jump, he reached one, ripped its core out, spun and threw it at another. Each move was perfect. No hesitation, no fear. When it ended, the square was silent again. Ray stood alone. Not a single drone remained. Tana watched all of it. She could not look away. This human was not like the others. There was something inside him, something they did not understand. Ray looked straight at the sky, as if he knew she was watching. Then he turned and walked into the smoke. Later that night, Tana stood before her superiors and gave her report. Her voice was calm, but her words were heavy. We are facing something we cannot scan. We cannot predict. We cannot stop. One general said, "He is still human." Tana looked him in the eye. Maybe not anymore. Back on Earth, Ray found an old mirror in the ruins of a store. He looked at his reflection. Eyes tired, face scarred, but something deep inside those eyes burned like a storm waiting to rise. He whispered to the empty air, "You want a war. Then you'll have one." And the fire behind him grew brighter. A cold wind swept through the dead city as the sun disappeared behind black clouds, and the streets were filled with ash and silence. The air tasted like metal and old smoke. Every wall carried marks from battles. Every corner held shadows. But one building still stood strong. A forgotten military base deep under the ruins. That was where they set the trap. The Zerai had failed to scan Ray. They had failed to stop him with fire and drones. Now they tried something different. They built a place full of death and silence. A maze of steel and gas. A place designed to hold even the strongest of enemies. A place meant to kill what could not be killed. Ray came to it alone. He did not carry a weapon. His hands were bare, his coat torn, his boots covered in dust. But his eyes were sharp like ice and fire together. He walked into the entrance without a word. The base came alive. Hidden doors locked behind him. Gas poured through small vents. Sniper bots moved into place on every wall. Turrets dropped from the ceiling. Ray kept walking. The gas tried to make him sleep, but he did not fall. The bots fired, but he moved before the shots were fired. He grabbed one and tore it in half. He crushed another with one hand. Then he threw a piece of broken steel into the eye of a turret without looking. Alarm screamed through the halls, but he did not stop. Every sensor watched him. Every camera tried to understand him, but the machines saw only chaos. He moved like he had done this before. Like every step was already written. He broke doors with a single kick. He touched wires and made them burn. He found the control room and pulled the heart from the wall. In the orbiting command ship, Tana watched it all in silence. Her hands trembled as she studied the screens. This was not battle. This was something else. This was like watching a storm walk through a dream. The generals behind her did not speak. Even they were silent now. Inside the base, Ray found something strange. A room filled with light and air that did not smell like death. In the center was a floating cube glowing blue and white. He stepped forward and touched it. Suddenly the world changed. He was standing in a long hallway lined with mirrors. Voices filled the air. His mother, his father, a voice from long ago, a doctor, a friend, a scream. This was no trap of steel. It was a trap of memory, of thought, of pain. The Zerai were not trying to kill his body. They were trying to break his mind. Each mirror showed him a moment he wanted to forget. Each voice whispered truths he hated. Each step forward felt like walking through fire. But Ray did not stop. He reached the end of the hall. There was a door. He opened it and stepped into a room that looked like his childhood home. His parents stood there smiling, but he knew they were not real. He closed his eyes. He remembered the fire that took everything. He remembered the years alone, the tests, the pain, the power. He opened his eyes and said one word. No. The room shattered like glass. The mirrors broke. The light died. He was back in the base. The cube was gone. Only silence remained. He had broken the mental cage. In the command ship, one general shouted, "This is not possible." Tana turned and answered, "This is not normal. He is not normal." Ray left the base without a scratch. The outside world was still burning. He walked into the smoke like a ghost made of fury and memory. That night he found a small camp of survivors. They watched him with wide eyes. He gave them food, water, hope. One young woman asked him, "Why are they so afraid of you?" Ray looked at the fire and spoke softly, "Because they do not understand me, and they cannot control what they do not understand." Far away in the heart of a ruined city, a strange mark began to appear on a wall. No one painted it. No one touched it. It burned itself into the stone. A handprint. Human. Below it, another word. Watch. Tana received the image and stared at it for hours. She could not sleep. She could not stop thinking about the human who walked through their strongest trap like it was a dream. She opened her private log and recorded a message. This man is changing everything. He is not the strongest human. He is not the smartest. But he is something more. He is free. And we do not know what freedom looks like until it stands against us. She closed the log and looked out the window of the ship. Earth was small but glowing. A planet on fire. A planet not yet broken. Ray stood on a rooftop that night looking at the stars. He knew they were watching. He wanted them to. Because tomorrow he would not hide. Tomorrow he would strike back. Snow fell in the Himalayas like soft ash from the sky, and silence ruled the mountains except for the low hum of alien engines above the clouds. Deep inside a hidden valley, humans had built their last stronghold with broken steel and stolen tech, and hands that no longer shook from fear. This was not a city but a fortress. This was not a shelter but a stand. Old soldiers stood beside young rebels. Scientists carried rifles. Farmers made bombs from scrap. Every face was tired, but every eye burned with the same fire. The Zirai fleet came at dawn. Dozens of black ships pierced the clouds and cast long shadows over the peaks. Their scanners had finally found the camp. Their generals smiled coldly as they prepared to finish what they started. Tana watched from her ship, but her heart was not steady. She had studied the humans too long to believe they would break like before. And somewhere down there in the snow and smoke was the one man who refused to fall. Ray stood on a ridge above the valley, wearing a long coat torn by fire and wind. He carried no weapon, but his eyes saw everything. He watched the Zirai ships form patterns in the sky. He listened to their drones hum through the canyons. He waited. The first strike came without warning. A beam of energy sliced through the sky and turned a bunker into fire. The mountain shook. Men and women shouted and ran to their posts. Missiles launched. Guns screamed. But the Zirai were too many and too fast. Drones flooded the valley. Mechs marched through stone and snow. People fell. The lines cracked. Then Ray moved. He ran straight into the fight. Every drone that fired missed. Every beam bent away. He reached the first mech and ripped its leg off. He used the leg to smash another. He jumped onto a ship and tore open its hull with bare hands. Soldiers saw him and stopped running. They turned and fought harder. They saw the impossible and believed it could be done. Ray moved faster than the machines. He dodged their scans. He shattered their codes. He touched a tower, and its lights died. He reached the center of the valley, where the Zirai had dropped a command beacon. It pulsed with alien light. He placed his hand on it and whispered something no one heard. The beacon shook. Sparks flew. Then silence. Above the valley the ships stuttered. Weapons froze. Scanners blinked out. The whole attack paused for one breathless moment. That was all the humans needed. They fired everything. The sky turned red. Drones fell like rain. Mechs exploded. The Zirai lines cracked for the first time. Tana saw it all and whispered to herself, "They are winning." The generals on her ship shouted and ordered a retreat. This was not a planned withdrawal. This was fear. In the valley, soldiers hugged each other and cried, not from sorrow, from shock. They had survived. They had done more than survive. They had won. Ray stood in the middle of the field as smoke rose around him. His coat burned at the edges. His hands were cut, but he smiled. A boy ran to him and asked, "Are you going to chase them now?" Ray looked at the sky. Not yet, but soon. That night the valley echoed with voices. People sang old songs. They lit fires. They told stories. And always they spoke of the man who stood against the storm. Tana sat in her ship and played back the footage over and over. She zoomed in on Ray's face. Not angry, not proud, just calm, like a river that could turn into a flood. She sent a message to her private channel. The humans have turned. They are no longer hiding. They are learning. And he is leading. The generals debated. Some wanted to send the full fleet. Others spoke of Protocol Blackfire, a final weapon, a last resort. They feared him now. But they feared something else more. The idea that one man could inspire millions. Ray walked alone that night to the highest cliff above the valley. He looked at the stars, at the place where the ships had run. He whispered something to the wind. Then he pulled a piece of Zerai metal from his coat, a chip, glowing faintly. He closed his hand around it. The next battle would not be in the mountains. It would be everywhere. Humanity had won one fight, but Ray knew this was just the beginning. The real war was coming. Tana stood in the shadowed corner of her ship's observation deck and watched Earth spin slowly below her like a scar jewel wrapped in storm clouds and smoke. Her hands were cold, her thoughts heavy. The battle in the Himalayas had changed something deep inside her. She had seen fear in the general's eyes. She had seen courage in the humans. She had seen Ray. She replayed the footage again. Ray walking through fire. Ray touching machines and breaking them with no tools. Ray looking into the sky as if he knew she was there. She turned away from the screen and closed her eyes. The Zerai had trained her to think with logic, to remove emotion, to believe in strength above all. But Ray did not fight like the Zerai. He fought with something else, and it made her feel something she was not supposed to feel. Doubt. The order came just before dawn. Protocol Blackfire was approved. It would begin in 3 cycles. Tana read the words in silence. Then she deleted the message and stood still for a long time. Blackfire was not just a weapon. It was a world killer. If the Zerai could not control Earth, they would erase it. She left the ship that night without permission. A small shuttle. Silent. Fast. Invisible to most scans. She set the course to Earth's surface. She did not tell anyone. Not even the system. Ray was waiting. He stood in the ruins of Rome, near an old stone bridge that had survived centuries of war and fire. His coat moved with the wind. The night was quiet except for the far-off howls of alien drones and the soft beat of broken waves on broken stone. He did not look surprised when she landed. He simply turned and nodded. You came. Yes. Why? Because they will destroy everything. I know. They stood without words for a while. Tana looked at him and for the first time noticed how human he looked and how unlike any human she had ever known. He looked tired but strong. He looked gentle but dangerous. He looked ready. She told him everything. About Blackfire. About the timeline. About the end. Ray listened. No anger. No fear. Just silence. Then he spoke. We have one last chance. He pulled something from his coat. A core. Zerai tech. But changed. Modified. It pulsed with blue light. This is a weapon and a message. Built from your machines. Fueled by my blood. If we use it right, we can shut down the whole fleet. Tana stared at it. She had never seen anything like it. It was beautiful and terrible. She asked him why he trusted her. He said trust is a choice, not a trade. She asked him if he thought they could win. He said we already did the impossible once. She looked at the stars and thought of all the voices she had silenced for years. And then she made her choice. I will help you. Ray nodded and gave her the core. Together, they walked through the broken city toward an old communication tower. They would need a strong signal. They would need perfect timing. They would need to reach the heart of the fleet. But they had no more time to wait. Back on the Zerai command ship, the generals could not find Tana. They scanned the systems, checked the logs. Nothing. One suggested she had gone rogue. Another said she had been taken. But none of them guessed the truth. Tana had chosen a side, and it was not theirs. They launched Blackfire early. A line of ships moved toward the Earth's core. A device shaped like a star began to open. Lights flared. Energy built. But something was wrong. The signal came from Earth. A pulse. Blue and sharp. It entered their systems like a whisper. Then it screamed. Screens blinked. Controls failed. Ships spun in circles. Weapons shut down. The command ship itself began to drift. Ray stood in the tower with his hand on the core. Tana beside him. The wind tore through their hair. The city below them lit up with sparks from the sky. This is only the start, he said. She looked at him and knew it was true. From orbit the Earth looked brighter. The fires of war were still burning, but the tide had turned. The humans had sent a message. We are still here. We are not afraid. We are not finished. And the stars seemed to listen. Tana sent one final message to her people, not with words, with images. Ray walking through fire, children laughing in the rubble, hands building walls from ruins. Hope. She closed the signal. She looked at Ray. He looked at the sky. They both knew the real fight was still coming, but now they would face it together. The wind blew across the broken desert, and the heat rose in waves off the cracked ground where nothing grew and nothing moved except a single man walking slowly toward a place buried under time and silence. Ray had not been here in many years. He had stayed away from it like a wound that never healed. But now the world was breaking, and he knew he had to remember. Tana followed him at a distance. She said nothing. She knew this journey was not for her. It was for him. They reached a low hill covered in dust and rock. At the top stood a single rusted door, half buried under sand. Ray stood before it and closed his eyes. Then he reached out and touched the metal. The door opened with a sound like a long sigh, and the earth below them lit up with faint blue lines. They walked inside together. The air was cold. The walls were steel. The floor hummed with old power. This was not a base built by the Zerai. This was human. Years ago, before the stars had fallen, before the sky had burned, there was a program. It had no name, only numbers. It was hidden from the world, hidden from leaders, hidden even from those who built it. They had found something in the ice. A signal. A pattern older than time. Not from aliens. From Earth itself. Something inside human DNA. Something asleep. They believed they could wake it. Ray had been a child when they took him. An orphan with no name and no file. No one would miss him. No one would ask. They brought him here. They ran tests. They spoke in soft voices and used big words. They said they wanted to help him. But they lied. They cut. They burned. They rewired his nerves and filled his blood with things he could not name. Every day he screamed. Every night he dreamed of fire. The others died, one by one. Some from pain. Some from fear. Some simply stopped breathing. But Ray lived. He changed. His skin healed faster. His mind became sharper. He began to see things before they happened. He heard voices before they were spoken. And then one night the power failed. A fire broke out in the lab. Alarms screamed. Doctors ran. Ray walked through the flames untouched. He left the facility and vanished into the world. He tried to be normal. He tried to forget, but the world would not let him. Tana walked beside him, now through the empty halls of that place. She saw the rooms, the broken tools, the old chairs where children once sat. She saw the marks on the wall scratched by small hands. She looked at Ray. "You were just a boy." He nodded. "But I was never just a boy." They reached the center room, a long chamber filled with broken machines and shattered screens. Ray walked to a wall and wiped away dust to reveal a mirror. He looked into it and saw the past. The boy with wild eyes. The men in coats. The pain. He spoke softly. They tried to make a weapon, but they made something else. Tana stepped closer. "They made you." Ray turned. "No, I made me." Outside the facility, the sky began to darken. Storms moved in from the horizon. Zerai ships were coming again. Ray and Tana left the ruins and stood on the hill as thunder rolled across the sky. She asked if he was ready. He looked at the clouds. "I was born ready." They rode through the desert on an old bike Ray found half buried under rock. Tana laughed for the first time as the wind hit her face. She had never ridden something so old, so loud, so alive. They reached a safe camp hidden in a canyon where survivors gathered and planned. Ray spoke to them, told them who he was, told them the truth. They did not fear him. They followed him. He showed them how to break the Zerai codes, how to use stolen tech, how to move unseen. He trained them like ghosts. Quick, silent, free. Word spread across the world. The man who could not be stopped was building an army, not of soldiers, of believers. People came from the ruins, from the mountains, from the sea. Ray stood at the front not as a king, not as a god, but as a symbol. He had come from fire, from pain, from a place forgotten by all but him. And now he had returned not to destroy, but to protect. Tana watched him speak. She felt something rise inside her. Not duty, not fear, hope. In the night, Ray stood alone and looked at the stars. He knew the final battle was close. He knew the Zerai would come with everything they had. But he also knew something they did not. They had the most advanced ships, the strongest weapons, the sharpest minds. But he had something more. He had a reason. And sometimes one reason was enough to burn a galaxy. The sky over Earth turned red as the Zerai fleet appeared like a wall of fire and shadow stretching from one horizon to the other, and the stars seemed to vanish behind their dark wings as thunder rolled across oceans and mountains and cities both ruined and alive. The last sunrise came not with light, but with the sound of sirens and the deep growl of engines as humans prepared for the final stand. Ray stood at the top of an old watchtower built from steel and memory and looked down at the valley below, where thousands had gathered not to flee, but to fight. Some wore armor made from scrap. Some carried alien rifles. Some carried nothing but knives and courage. But all of them watched Ray. All of them waited. Tana stood beside him. She wore human gear now. She had no rank, no title, no command. She had only one reason to stand there, and it was written in the eyes of every child who had not yet seen peace. Far above them, the Zerai command ship opened its core. Inside it, the black fire protocol began to rise. A star of death forged by fear. It was alive. It was ready. The generals gave their final command. Burn the world. But Earth had changed. It was not weak anymore. It was not alone. Ray raised his hand, and the signal went out. Every human base, every rebel camp, every hidden fighter moved at once. Drones launched from caves. Mechs rolled from rivers. Jets made from stolen parts flew from deep canyons. The battle began in fire. Zerai ships rained plasma on the ground. But humans fought back with weapons powered by hacked cores. Towers fell but were rebuilt. Men died but others rose to take their place. Ray moved through it all like a storm inside a storm. He ran faster than sound. He broke enemy walkers with bare hands. He jumped onto a Zerai ship and drove it into another. Tana led a unit through a breach in the enemy line. She used codes only she knew. She shut down shields. She disabled scans. She made a path. The command ship noticed. It turned toward the signal Ray had sent. It fired the first beam of black fire. The beam hit the earth and the ground cracked. Mountains shook. Oceans boiled. But then the light stopped. Ray had reached the source. He stood before the black fire star with the core in his hands. The one built from Zerai tech and human blood. The one he had sworn to use only once. He pushed it into the machine. A pulse spread across the field. Blue and white. Bright as truth. The Zerai fleet flickered. Their systems failed. Their weapons froze. Their generals screamed. Ray fell to his knees. The power took everything from him. But he smiled. Tana reached him just before the next wave came. She held him as the sky opened again. This time it was not ships. It was silence. The Zerai fleet began to fall. One by one. Ships turned. Engines died. Lights dimmed. Earth watched as the impossible happened. The invasion stopped. Ray stood slowly, his body broken, his heart beating like thunder. He looked at the sky and raised one hand. We are still here. And the world answered. People cried in streets, laughed in bunkers, danced in the dust. They had survived. They had won. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they had something no machine could copy. Will. The Zerai retreated. Their fleet scattered. Their command ship vanished into the black. Tana stayed. She walked beside Ray as they visited each city, each ruin, each camp. Together they helped rebuild. They planted trees where fire had once ruled. They painted walls with names of the fallen. They told stories to the children. Ray never asked for praise. He never gave speeches. He only built. A monument was placed at the center of the valley where the last battle had begun. It was made of stone and steel. On it were carved 3 simple words. He stayed human. Years passed. The world healed. The stars grew quiet. Some said Ray had disappeared. Some said he had become something more. Some said he still walked the earth watching, waiting. Tana knew the truth. He had given everything. And now he rested. She stood alone one night, looking at the sky. She saw a star blink and vanish. She smiled, because she remembered, and the galaxy would too.